and we have invited people like human resource profession, especially those with learning. So I'd like to welcome you to our critical action research series. I will be the one moderating, and my colleague Julie Oze and Abiodun will be the hosts. So at any point in time, especially for those of us online, you need to say anything at all, just use the raise hand button and they will allow you to speak. Other than that, it's fine if you drop your messages in the chat box. The host will keep them and read to the rest of us. Now, a little bit about why we are here today. And you will all agree with me that we cannot pretend that since COVID-19, the mode by which we learn and the scope of our learning has been affected significantly. To the point that most HR people and organizations are undecided about making the choice between nominating their employees for face-to-face or online courses. More so because in our market, most organizations cannot really tell what is the efficacy of online courses and delivery. As a school, we have had experience, we've received a lot of feedback also, and this calls for a concern. As a result, we would like everyone affected by this reality to put our voices together, be able to reflect on the issues, and probably reconcile our perspectives. So for today, this is our agenda. We don't intend to spend more than 1 hour to 30 minutes here, including question and answer. And I will also like to talk about our NGO, which is the platform we want to use for this regular monthly professional discussion. It is called Career, which is Center for Academic Research and Integrity and Anti-Plagiarism, registered as an NGO, and we had a couple of publications in the past, but we want to be more focused on action research than academic research. An action research system is the one that relies on the experience of professionals to resolve certain problems than to create theories. So our essence is to solve professional problems and to create theories. The program is called CAS, but the full meaning of CAS is Critical Action Research Series, just by way of introduction. Now, I'm going to take the opening presentation from the CEO of Commonwealth of Learning, and she will talk us into the global experience of the impacts of the disruption caused by COVID-19 and to what extent it has affected everyone, not limited to academic schools only, but professional learning and development in general. And her address will be taking about 15 minutes of our time. Most of the things she will be saying are very critical to our discussion today. And if you can afford to write, please write, but please give all of your attention to many of the things she's saying. Within her delivery, we are likely to find solutions to some of the challenges, and I really advise us to please make some time and see this portion of the discussion a very important one. Thank you.
Distinguished colleagues, thank you for the invitation to be part of the 3rd International Conference on Distance and E-Learning. My topic today is challenges for e-learning during COVID-19. And this presentation is based on a recent report to Commonwealth Education Ministers prepared jointly with Sir John Daniel. As many of you know, the Commonwealth of Learning, or COL, is an intergovernmental organization with headquarters in Canada, and we work in 54 Commonwealth countries around the world. Our mission is to help Commonwealth member states and institutions to use distance learning and technologies for expanding access to education and training. The COVID-19 crisis has had an unprecedented impact on education. The education of more than 90% students globally was disrupted by institutional closures. When the pandemic struck, the education sector was clearly not prepared and had to look for immediate solutions. E-learning was the preferred option. But how many students have access to electricity, computers, and connectivity? Only half the world's population have internet access, with a wide variation within the Commonwealth, ranging from nearly 95% access in a rich country like Brunei to less than 15% in some of the others. While the status of mobile subscriptions is more encouraging with over 100% in most countries, access is not universal. So what kind of technologies do we use to ensure that we reach the last person in the queue? Distinguished colleagues, thank you for the invitation to be part of the third International Conference on Distance and E-Learning. My topic today is challenges for e-learning during COVID-19. And this presentation is based on a recent report to Commonwealth Education Ministers prepared jointly with Sir John Daniel. As many of you know, the Commonwealth of Learning, or COL, is an intergovernmental organization with headquarters in Canada, and we work in 54 Commonwealth countries around the world. Our mission is to help Commonwealth member states and institutions to use distance learning and technologies for expanding access to education and training. The COVID-19 crisis has had an unprecedented impact on education. The education of more than 90% students globally was disrupted by institutional closures. When the pandemic struck, the education sector was clearly not prepared and had to look for immediate solutions. E-learning was the preferred option. But how many students have access to electricity, computers, and connectivity? Only half the world's population have internet access, with a wide variation within the Commonwealth, ranging from nearly 95% access in a rich country like Brunei to less than 15% in some of the others. While the status of mobile subscriptions is more encouraging with over 100% in most countries, access is not universal. So what kind of technologies do we use to ensure that we reach the last person in the queue? In this presentation, I will look at the challenges for e-learning from 4 perspectives. First, social issues and the growing inequality that institutions need to combat. Second, the pedagogical challenge, when teachers had to make the sudden transition to online mode. Third, the challenge of harnessing technology for teaching and learning. And finally, the psychological impact and the anxieties resulting from the uncertainty about the future. While students with resources have continued to learn, it is the poorest children who have been hardest hit. UNESCO estimates that about 11 million girls may never return to school due to this crisis. In pre-COVID-19 days, these children in a remote region in Bangladesh studied in these boat schools, which picked them up from the villages and dropped them home after classes were over. As this was no longer possible in the pandemic, the only way to reach them was to bring the teachers to the communities and maintain social distance. The only technology available to these children is print materials. Another constituency that is in danger of being further marginalized during this crisis are persons with disabilities. Even in normal circumstances, the participation of persons with disabilities in higher education has been very low, especially in developing countries such as India and South Africa. Preeti Dubby, this girl in Mauritius, could not pass her class 9 exam because she didn't have a Braille textbook. Now that she has been provided learning resources and assistive devices, she is doing well in class and plans to go on to university. More persons with disabilities prefer distance learning as it is more convenient, more flexible, affordable, and provides a degree of anonymity. Allama Iqbal Open University has special programs for persons with disabilities and can provide valuable lessons for other institutions. Because of the pandemic, youth unemployment is high globally. Here again, women and girls are more disadvantaged. In collaboration with Coursera, CALL offered free training opportunities to 100,000 persons around the Commonwealth. And these girls from Fatima Jinnah Women's University have successfully completed the programs for workforce recovery from some of the top universities in the world. Another impact of the pandemic has been low morale and motivation, especially among women and girls from remote regions. CALL has initiated Commonwealth Wise Women, a mentorship program for underprivileged girls, which links them with eminent women to develop leadership skills. In fact, I'm mentoring 2 girls in Pakistan. Let us now turn to the pedagogical challenge and how institutions can address issues of teaching learning in this changing world. No one was prepared for the sudden transition to e-learning. Teachers had to move overnight from classroom lectures to online mode. Students had to learn remotely without any support, and parents were expected to help students with their lessons. So would access to quality content help? Researchers in Canada analyzed 3 types of interactions: student content, student-student, and student-teacher, to identify which had the best impact on learning outcomes. And they found that the student content interaction was by far the most effective. Since content is important, where do we find quality content? Today we have a vast resource of open content or open educational resources on the internet. OER are educational materials which have been made freely available under an open license and can be adopted, adapted, translated according to local needs. A call study in Antigua and Barbuda showed that using OER reduced the costs of textbooks for students and improved learning outcomes. Khan Academy in the US has developed OER in maths and a range of disciplines that have been translated into Urdu, and this quality content is available for use as we make the transition to e-learning. CALL has developed a repository of OER in higher education, teacher training, and skills development that could also be of use. Learners needed a great deal of support during this crisis. Some institutions invested in 24/7 online hubs and call centers. Learning analytics have helped to provide personalized learning and kept the human touch alive. The Open University of Malaysia has developed chatbots to provide personalized tutoring facilities to its learners. Assessment has been another challenge during this crisis. Artificial intelligence-based assessment is very helpful because it constantly provides feedback to learners, teachers, and parents about how the students learn, the support they need, and the progress they are making. Micro-credentials are leading to the possibility of offering shorter, just-in-time courses that can be taken at one's own pace or time. The crisis has highlighted the need for more flexibility and the need to offer continuous assessments through assignments and portfolios. As teachers make the difficult transition from classroom teaching to online provision, they need capacity building. CALL is offering free massive open online courses or MOOCs on technology-enabled and blended learning, jointly with Athabasca University in Canada, for teachers anywhere in the world. So you're most welcome to take them. And now that the world has been forced to use technology, we will need to ensure that the technologies are available, accessible, and affordable. A recent survey of Stanford University students conducted by Tony Bates found that 16% of undergraduates did not have access to the internet for half the time, and 60% undergraduates from low-income families did not have a private place to study. Now, if this is the situation in a resource-rich university like Stanford, how do we reach our students in developing countries? There has been a renewed interest in the use of educational TV, such as the Teleschool in Pakistan initiative, which is supplemented with SMS and web support for interactivity. CALL developed Aptus, a low-cost offline virtual classroom that provides learners in remote locations with access to digital resources. This is a server that works with a solar charger and a wireless router and costs approximately $150. This was deployed in a mountain school in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and we found that teachers were more motivated and students performed better because they had access to videos and other quality content. Major massive open online or MOOC initiatives have been taken in several Asian countries, where thousands of courses are now available in Asian languages. But how do we reach those who do not have access to the internet? Because MOOCs require internet. CALL has developed Mobi MOOCs, which is a platform that works in low bandwidth situations and has an interface with basic mobile phones. This has been used successfully for training farmers during the lockdown and can also be used to reach remote students in our universities. If we want to reach out to students even in the remotest communities, we need to use a range of technologies from print to radio, TV, mobile delivery, and the internet. Finally, the pandemic has also had a huge psychological impact, something that we have not given much attention to in the past. Students are anxious about their future, feel they are being left behind, and are isolated from their peers and friends. When an earthquake hit New Zealand in 2011, the main focus was on providing emotional support to children and their communities. Now again, when parents are suffering from job losses and students are dealing with school closures and isolation, the need for empathy and well-being has been highlighted as never before. With more persons using technology, there are the challenges of cybersecurity, data privacy, and the safety of network devices that we need to look into. Institutions have realized the value of frequent communications with their students. For example, the National Institute of Open Schooling in India has established call centers to support learners. Similarly, in Jamaica, they have provided free SIM cards to parents so that they can access the helplines that the ministry has set up for them. From the experience of this pandemic, one thing has certainly become clear, that we need to find innovative solutions appropriate to each different context so that we do not leave anyone behind. Going forward, we need to focus on the 3 C's for effective e-learning: connectivity, content, and capacity, so that we can provide access to quality education for everyone. Countries need to invest in ICTs, which includes access to devices, connectivity, and zero rating of educational platforms. New Zealand offered devices for distribution to students, and ministries in South Africa and Jamaica have provided free access to platforms by partnering with telecom companies. Any investment in ICT infrastructure must make provision for reaching the last mile so that existing inequalities are not exacerbated. There's an urgent need for quality e-learning courses. This would require a change in mindset to start using the content that others have prepared from the web and to contextualize this content to local contexts. For effective e-learning, we need to also build the capacity of policymakers and practitioners. Governments can develop enabling policies and regulations to promote blended learning, to make the education sector more flexible and resilient to deal with future challenges. For institutions, the top priority must be to build the capacity of both staff and students in e-learning. Research shows that blended learning works best in developing countries. And blended learning refers to a combination of e-learning and face-to-face provision. It's up to the institutions to decide what percentage of each component they need to use depending on the availability of resources. And you can see from this chart that there are various options. COL has also developed several guidelines and instruments that provide practical advice to teachers and instructors for adopting effective e-learning approaches. COL also has a repository of curated content that you may find useful, so don't hesitate to reach out. And on that note, let me thank you for your kind attention.
Right. Well, I'd like to thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening. So many times in the presentation, we refer to the word COL, and COL means Common Way of Learning, which is an intergovernmental organization with focus on educational learning, and there are 54 countries that signed that agreement. Now, we have heard that much to give us background into how serious the issues are and the efforts of different institutions, government and private organizations in addressing the issue. But that is at a global level. Today, I want us to, using that as a foundation, I want us to bring the discussion home and make sure that our focus is right now on Nigeria. Okay? And the peculiarity of our market, that will help professionals to understand what choices to make from time to time, what compromises might be necessary, and determining the real objective of what we want to, the system we're using. So I am going to leave the screen to my host now, who is going to continue sharing the screen for us from this point. To start with, let me remind us that I said this is not a training, neither is it a workshop. It's meant to be a round table discussion. I will lead the discussion from slide to slide, but you are free to express your opinion or disagree with any of my perspectives by simply using the raise hand button if you are online, or signify by a show of hand if you are on site. I will let you speak so everyone can hear you, and as many people as are willing should also lend their voice to make us reconcile perspectives. In my opinion, I think that the most important objectives of training and development is to build the capacities of employees. And that has significant implications for productivity, profitability, and longevity of businesses. So training and development are not some sort of opportunities for people to get off work, to breathe, or spend the time on their own. Although what we have witnessed in the past is that people go to training, make friends, listen to discussions, and they agree. But the reality is that times have changed. And if you agree with my summation on the objectives of training and development, it's okay. I will move to the next slide. But if there are people who don't agree or have one or two things to add, it's okay to show your hand. I will let you speak briefly to the people. But coming from this background, learning and development professionals, HR officers and managers, organizations also need to remember the core objective of sending people for training and development. Is it for them to feel excited or be happy with the process, or to really learn and use the learning for the need of the job. We should not forget that times have changed, and because of that, we also need to change. And that change, in our opinion, is what has been difficult for most people. Changing from how we used to learn to the reality of how we must learn now. That has been a difficult one, and I don't think many people are thinking about it. So as the providers of education or training and development are trying to change, the learners themselves need to be willing to change. And I agree, there needs to be a motivation, which is intrinsic or extrinsic, but there is a lot more that is required in terms of personal motivation to learn for most of the learners or employees that go for training and development. Despite the pandemic and the disruptions, not only to learning and development, but to life in general, technology has given us a wonderful advantage. How much of that advantage we use as far as our objectives for learning is concerned is my reflection right now. Are we talking about technology in the form of video telephony alone, such as Microsoft Teams and Zoom? Are these the only available technology for effectiveness? Or they are the easiest to use? Because that is what I see in practice. A lot more people and organizations seem to be more agreeable with a learning and development arrangement that is totally 100% based on the use of video telephony platform, where instructors sign on to a platform and learners also sign on to a platform. This might be the easiest thing, but in terms of effectiveness, I don't agree that it is the best. For obvious reasons. As I speak with you right now, I don't know how many of the people that sign online are really as engaged as those of us in class. And once that we can't bring everybody to class right now, there are many more ways of ensuring that people participate and they are engaged in the process. And one very important way is an activity-based type of learning. But we're talking about learning here, not children play. There are no other forms of activity beyond discussions, made possible by reading and writing. Unfortunately, we're in a society where reading and writing is not given so much attention to. We need to learn that that has become a critical change element in the current reality, and a lot of people that are affected need to change, consider changing their approach to learning. If we want to rely totally on Microsoft Teams and Zoom, it means that we can get the most minimal form of skills development, and people can take training and development, as seriously as they are willing, and nobody will be able to tell. Even when there are assessments for them, there are ways people can bypass this, and nobody will know it. Yes, please.
Yeah, I have a feedback on the first slide.
Yes, please.
Benefits. And I think one of the key problems we have is not defining the purpose of learning development in itself. Or
not defining the purpose.
Yes. So you find growing up that the reason you went to school was essentially to get a certification. Then you think about doing it. So the purpose for which you go to school when you are young is always defined as going to school so that you can become a doctor. Not go to school so that you can change the world through medicine. There's a difference in that little phrase.
Yeah.
All right. So for as long as you become a doctor, say, I've fulfilled what my parents want, now let me go and do music. Well, certification, pay your certification. Now let me go and do music. So we have a lot of people who have certification that they never practice. I mean, I studied mechanical manufacturing engineering, and I've not been in a factory since I left school, simply because that was not my passion. It's my qualification, but my passion is in management. So we find that the motivation is always a challenge, and that affects the way in which you deliver. So if I was a CEO and I'm sending my staff for training, I would be more interested first in what is the vision of the company and why you train.
Absolutely.
And so even if you are maybe in the supply chain department and I'm trying to get some training in finance, I might find people more useful in that training for the simple principle that you have more passion in financial management than even the person with a chartered accounting certification.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that this needs analysis needs to be done before people are trained. It just has to be that we no longer focus on, oh, you are an accountant, so go for accounting training. You are an HR person, go for HR training. What if HR person will do well as a project manager? What if the accountant will be fantastic as a supply chain expert in a corporate environment, separate from how they came into the organization? And I think that's very important for HR managers to do a lot more of advising the board that training should no longer just be based on you are a soldier and therefore you don't need to learn about governance, or you are an engineer. I'm sure you are familiar with the fact that in UK now practically every profession is now trying to be chartered as a manager.
Yeah.
And why is everybody moving to become a chartered manager? They have realized that over specialization makes it difficult for you to compete in a new global system where management is the top skill.
Yeah.
And I think that's the issue, is skill sets that are not designed to problem solve. So that's that. And then on the issue of the technology, you just mentioned it, and I agree with you that there's a different synergy classroom learning than online learning. We all learned it last year. All of us were in that picture. And a lot of people were burnt out. A lot of people resigned their jobs in PwCs and all the big consulting companies of this world because they found out that the energy that comes from partnering on the physical level, they were forced to carry it in 100% via technology. Yeah. And there was so much meltdown. People were leaving their jobs and going on holidays as soon as that was why the aircrafts, I mean, all the airlines had a very busy period last quarter of last year. But people needed to escape. So I would think that human nature, by the nature of who we are, Abraham Maslow tell us that human interaction will never be taken over by technology. And I think companies that are looking for cheap ways to train their staff by simply putting them on technological platforms are actually not going to get the best of them.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you for your contribution. If you have anything to say online, you could use the lift hand button or drop your comment in the chat box, then the host will pick it from there. Now back to my discussion. Don't let us forget that culturally we are disadvantaged. I'm speaking about our society now, not globally. We are disadvantaged because of our approaches to learning. The current reality has pushed us further backwards in terms of learning and development. And we can't not just leave the status quo and continue existing like that. How much of learning takes place via video telephony platforms or live virtual sessions, as I would like to take it. We all know it's very limited and it can't do much, if anything at all, at least for the objective of upscaling the skills and development of different employees. And organizations need to think about this. HR professionals, learning and development professionals need to think about this. It's not about how cheap it is. It's not about just ticking the box of sending people for training and development. It's not about whether the people are happy to learn, they're happier to learn that way than in any other way that engages them. We need to find a balance among all of these factors. But thanks to technology, and we have heard from the common way of learning, that in terms of effectiveness of learning, what is the most important is the student content engagement. Students Teacher engagement is important. Student engagement is important. But the most productive in terms of effectiveness is how you are able to make the learner engage with the content, because the content is what does the job. The process through which you engage them can be different. Instructional designers know this much. But what I have noticed in our local market is the unwillingness of people to engage maximally with those contents because of a little bit of discomfort they experience in having to change from the way they used to learn and accept the reality of current learning. No doubt, technology presents its own disadvantages. There are problems that come with technology. We know that not everybody has equal access to internet. That is a problem on the side. Another problem is the skills required to determine the functionality of most of these platforms and maximize them. There are still some of professionals today that are not even able to host a simple Zoom session because they are not used to the functionality. And then not many people are also ready to be used to it. Simple ethical issues, people flout from time to time. But those are issues that are easily corrected within individuals. So let's look at the external factors, such as limited bandwidth and anything but robust connectivity. We have that problem from time to time. And so, given that problem, can we then say that we would take all of our learning 100% via internet? No. There has to be a means that we learn a little on internet and take the rest of the learning offline for individuals to engage with the content and come back online to talk to each other, just to experience the psychological excitement that comes with learning. So it means that, in my opinion, 30% of the learning can be done online, real time, through Zoom or Teams. But the other 70%, and this is where the change is most required, the other 70%, individuals need to be willing to exert themselves on self-study. I don't think there's too much about this, especially when the providers are able to design the program in ways that does not create so much distraction from your 9 to 5 routines. So if there's a lot of flexibility and the activities you're reading and writing or written discussion can be provided at your free time, or something that can take you 3 hours, you can be given 4 days to do it. I think that comes with some flexibility, but people need to be a little more serious and be willing to make that sacrifices. Otherwise, organizations and HR professionals need to understand that it's really not the employees alone that are losing, the companies are losing, and the HR professional, learning and development professional, they are compromising with this process of loss. It's very important, and I think we need to change our paradigms in that regard. Now, I said initially that we are taking this discussion to our grassroots. How many of the modes of learning have we really identified with as people in Nigeria or West of Africa? The majority of organizations have resorted to only live virtual learning. I do not blame those organizations. I also blame some providers of learning, some training institutes, some private business schools, who only, because they believe that it is cheaper for their clients, because they think that the client will readily accept it because it's cheaper, and it's cheaper on their own side too. they deliver all of their training sessions 100% on Zoom and Microsoft Teams. Nobody needs to tell us that this is not effective. It's not even as effective as what we used to have when we have face-to-face. There's need for those training providers to look for a real engagement between learners and the content. The game has gone beyond just mere discussion. No longer in lesson, but via the internet. And there's a lot of distractions, there's a lot of failure in connection in trying to do that. So, and I accept, in trying to make learners connect with the content now, it comes with a bit of discomfort. And this is where HR professionals are needed to reorientate their employees about what is required to take training seriously beyond what we used to have. In my opinion, those of us in learning and development roles in corporate organizations have not risen to the occasion by trying to moderate the expectation of our employees that it's no longer business as usual, that live virtual sessions cannot deliver adequately as what is required for them to perform on their job. There's need for a system that uses technology reasonably and that engages the employees with the content of the training. Also creates time for reflection, but then there's a price to pay, and that price is that of discomfort to the employees. But these discomforts are also minimal, and they are different from person to person. In my experience, some people that really like reading and writing have found it to be interesting, involving themselves in reading and writing activities. It allows them some time to think constructively and provide written discussions and get feedback from facilitators and the rest of the class. It also helps people to create new habits, which will eventually help them to become better professionals. And I'm talking about the habit of reading and the habit of writing and criticality. That improves cognition, and we can't deny that. But my most important point is the unwillingness of the learners themselves, employees nominated for training, to apply themselves to the content. They are more interested in live virtual discussion. There's also a false line around the activities of HR officers and learning and development professionals to identify what is the best method that will deliver the most effectiveness when you ask people to go for training. It cannot be about cheap training alone. It cannot be about the psychological excitement of having discussion by live virtual means. It can only be by the outcome of those trainings. And given the present limitation, the outcome of those trainings is only going to be determined by how much of the engagement those employees have with the content of the course, the materials. And there are materials all over the place, but not everybody knows how to use this material. And that is where instructional designers are required. People will give you textbooks, 1 or 2 chapters. People will give you presentation slides. People will give you videos, be it from TEDx or from universities. Make the collection of those things to address specific learning outcomes. But whatever effort those individuals have made, until learners are willing to apply themselves and be willing to go through the process, there cannot be any learning taking place. And these learners also know that, I'll come to you, and these learners also know that when their HR is on their side, or their learning and development department is on their side, in choosing how they prefer to learn because it's more convenient for them, they can decide to respond to the training provider anyhow they like. But you see, at the end of the day, it's not only the employees that's losing, the organization is losing, the HR people are also losing in terms of their own relevance to create the type of change that is necessary for time. Yes, sir.
My question is there no space for hybrid here? Hybrid of having the online learning platform where the materials are available for interaction, and then having the virtual, say for example, Zoom. So let's say you have a virtual learning platform already, and the content is there, people sign up to it. So you take them through that content through live, so they are simultaneously engaging with you. They're also online, seeing content, and we are there to do tests online, so they're interacting with the content, and simultaneously they're seeing you. I think that I see that something that universities are already doing. I don't know whether professionals who are doing development of their own are doing that kind of hybrid work.
That is what I expect an average training provider to be able to do. Use technology for engagements and also for live virtual discussions. That's what I expect. So for training providers that have learning management systems like portals, where you can warehouse those content, the resources, and arrange them in ways that bring about quality discussions and learning for a while, and then take the discussion of that to a live virtual means, I think it's more effective. And that is what you call hybrid or blended. And that's also what the CEO of Commonwealth of Learning called the blended learning experience. Blended means a mix of online and face-to-face. But we know that right now, this face-to-face has been replaced by Zoom and Microsoft Teams. That is the closest face-to-face you can have. But it does not take away the fact that there are very robust platforms that enable shareable contents and objects, which is called learning management systems. There's need for that. But in this hybrid system, what I have found out is that an average learner needs to realize that this system requires that we use learner-led system. Each person has to be willing to pay the price of spending some time alone to connect with the content before coming to live virtual platforms to have discussion. So I think it is the feeling of that separation that a lot of people are not able to handle. In which case, they will have to have the content, go through it, understand it, take note of which part they don't understand, and raise it to the facilitator, either by email or coming to the live virtual discussion. So that bit of it, I think, is what is posing the most difficult challenge to a lot of learners. And I also think that learning and development professionals in organizations are allowing them to get away with it. That is the thesis of my argument. And we need to look critically into it. Lest people responsible for managing other people in an organization lose their relevance. Less organizations, corporate organizations, also lose the advantage of the investment they make in training and development. So, and I think that in our environment, what we are seeing as the most popular is not the hybrid or the blended. It is the live virtual discussion. Come online, 2 hours every day for 3 days. Training is delivered, certificates are issued. And I think that it's a test of character for most training providers, in my opinion. So think that in that way, they have delivered quality learning that will translate into improved skill. And I think the reason why organizations are buying it is because it is cheaper and the employees find it more convenient. Learning is not about confidence, it's about your ability to exert the necessary, pressure on yourself so that you can understand what is being said and you can change something on you. And until we come to that reality and be willing to accept that people should engage with the content of the learning, we're not moving forward. In fact, we're going nowhere. As a matter of fact, I hope we're not moving backwards. Because we will not blame people who says we don't like to read and who says we don't like education, despite the pressures that we find in the environment. It's become even more obvious in the last 1 year to me that most professionals are not willing to accept activities that requires of them to learn or to provide the evidence of the learning through a discussion, whether written or verbal. A lot of them shy away from it. And we need to keep these discussions going until those responsible for ensuring that employees apply themselves to this content, until those responsible are aware to their responsibilities. Until then, corporate organizations are wasting their money on cheap, quick fix learning mode or method that is based on 100% life assurance. So like I said, if you have questions to ask or contributions to make, please use the lift hand button if you are online. But if you are here, I'm happy to recognize you quickly so that you can. So I might like to ask, what is the effectiveness of the different types and methods of TV? Given what I have tried to explain, not only me, given also what we've heard from the Commonwealth of Learning, we know that a mode that is involved in student content engagement is the most effective. The easiest is the student to students during discussion. It adds to learning what is the quantity of its addition to the process of learning. The discussion I'm having with you right now is volatile. You can take in so much, but between now and tomorrow, there's a limited quantity of it that you can recall. Versus, if I have provided this representation in a written form or in slides, and given it to each of you to read through yourself and provide discussion based on them, no doubt you're likely to remember more because you have engaged with that content. You have also taken time to reflect before you provide your discussion. This needs to be something instructional designers in training institutes, in corporate organizations also have to understand in order to get the values of the investment made in training and development. Let's not be deceived by thinking that training is now cheaper and that organization can save cost on it. That is not an advantage. It's not sustainable because it will translate into something terrible for organizations on the long run. The advantage of learning and development will be lost if we place too much emphasis on comfort and ease of learning or the training model itself.
Where exactly is the saving other than as it cheaper?
Yeah, on the long run, it's not cheaper.
Other than people paying for their transport.
Yeah.
The section about the content is not diminished because
it does not, hopefully people learning can agree to engage with the content made available to them. And I think that is really key on the long run if people realize that in terms of learning and development, content is the most important thing. And whatever it takes you to engage with content is what you need to do. Whether it is reading, whether it's jotting, whether it's writing, whatever you need to do is what is the most important in learning. Discussions alone cannot deliver training to the level that is expected to translate that learning into skills. So, I have mentioned it in a little bit. Where are the fault lines? Where are the fault lines? And with all sense of apology, I want to think that everyone that is responsible for making choices or decisions on how to learn, by which mode, and what to learn, the scope and content, they are responsible for taking their antecedents, they're responsible for looking out for what is really necessary for the objectives. I told the fault lines from people that make choices on how to learn and what to learn. It is not enough to say, go and learn online, and I want to see the outcome of assessment. Assessment is good, but do not forget that these people are learning by live virtual means. And in terms of assessment, they can go to the internet and get answers to all questions or anything. For me, it has to be engagement with the content. It's more important than assessment. Assessment can be included in that for you to check whether there was true engagement. But to think that assessment alone will help to determine whether learning took place or not, it's not it. I also think that organizations or HR department and learning and development officers need to come together and start talking to themselves, among themselves, about what to do in order to help employees be more willing to accept this change that will drive home the learning required from them. And I think that the employees will be more than willing if they think that their HR department or whoever is nominating them is for a method that increases learner content engagement. They will have no choice. I have seen it in the last 1 year. I've seen a situation where the chairman of the company was part of a team of 15 learners and was insisting that you may not be used to this process, but you need to follow through because he had learned by that mode previously. And so he could tell how effective it was. Unfortunately, not all of our decision makers have learned by that means, but the responsibility of finding out which system will deliver ultimately lies on those professionals. It's part of what we are employed to do as learning and development professionals. We need to go all out there and learn, if you don't know, about instructional designs and how to make them effective. We can't just take decisions based on emotions or how we feel or what the employee says. That is not a good way to decide on the mode of learning required for training and development. Jumi, please let us know if there are any hands up. Hello, Jumi.
Not at all, sir.
Okay,
No
thanks.
hands.
So, what do we think are the probable solutions? I don't think I'm in the best position to provide the solutions. I have tried to itemize the problems. I have tried to throw the fault at certain individuals. I have also tried to look for authoritative sources to portray my arguments. I think among HR professionals and learning and development professionals, there need to be some serious conversations, deep thinking, and changes in their paradigm, their approaches to them. I don't have all the answers to all of the questions I have asked today, or the questions that other people can ask. I do not have. What I know is what I know. And I'm looking forward to an opportunity to engage with other people so as to learn from them. I also want to improve my learning. So in terms of solution, it is left for each person to go back to his drawing board and find the best solution that works for their organization. The most important fact or the truth to go away with today is that only a learner content engagement will deliver true learning. How that should be made possible, people need to figure it out. And if HR people cannot, they need to learn to talk to people who can make them make sense of the different types of modes or methodologies that are available. Let's not forget that learning and development is not the only thing that's affected by the disruption. Most part of our life. But we have kept faith with most changes. We wear masks, we use hand sanitizers because we don't want to die. How about the little change that is required to make learning and development more effective? How are we going to make that change? It's just a bit of discomfort. And we have experienced discomfort in different aspects of our lives. How about trying to bend just a little backward? We need to remind employees who are sent out for training and development purposes that it's not attendance that's most important whenever they go for training. It's not how much of live virtual discussions they make happen. It's how much of learning that actually happens. How that learning is made possible depends on how the training provider structures the whole agreement, the whole arrangement. And if there are, sources of concern here and there, I think a sensible training provider should be able to provide respite for any concerns and make minimal adjustments here and there, just to make sure that people learn and for the good of their organization.
So I don't want to monopolize all the questions, but I will not misuse the opportunity to ask questions.
Okay, anyone can ask.
Yeah. I'm also learning confused. Again, they're all learning, so that's just what the learners to ask.
Yeah.
And you go with answers. I think you mentioned something now, saying what are the solutions, and then you put a rider that it's time for us to figure it out. Actually, I think it's an opportunity for ISM as well.
Yeah.
Because you have the database of a lot of people in positions of so many positions who are attending courses here, and you are an expert in learning and development. And I think it's time to do research. Yeah. It's time to get feedback. It's time to see if we can put together a Google Doc, asking people. These are various modes of providing education. You've been here when it was physical. Yeah. You've also experienced the virtual. Which do you prefer? I think it's time for us to give feedback. I mean, if we have feedback from 100 people, that's enough data to be able to advise HR managers that this is the research we have, and the result is that though we've adjusted to what we have found, but the truth is going forward, people would prefer either blended mode whether they rather have certain programs are blended, certain programs, soft skills, for example, I don't mind going online for soft skills.
Yeah.
But hard skills, hard skills requires what we're doing here now.
Yeah.
Disturbing you with questions, engaging the head, asking for your opinion, and a lot of people are shy online.
Yeah.
A lot of people, like you said, are engaged online. A lot of people are multitasking online.
Yeah.
The reason I said I was going to be is because maybe because I'm too old to multitask. But I can't imagine me trying to check email and simultaneously listen to you, and then waiting for the certification so I can show my employers. So I think we need to be honest in asking everybody whether
For them,
question like setting up this question, is it really working?
even when they find it comfortable,
yes,
is it really working?
Is it working? Is it working for your staff? Is it working? I was one of those that was at the forefront of creating learning management systems. I was the management staff of a tech company that designed the learning management system long before COVID. And what we realized that nobody wanted to use it until COVID.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Thank God for COVID.
Yeah.
Because I think naturally Nigerians don't like online learning.
Yeah.
There was a particular time I was doing an online course in school in Switzerland.
Yes.
Almost all people around me were thinking I was crazy.
Right.
Why would you do an online course?
Correspondence.
I didn't understand that.
Yeah.
So thank God for COVID. During COVID, then I was now able to put my points.
Yeah.
Now everybody, even your kids now, are studying from home. When I was learning this course, you guys were against me. So, but again, if you come to what you said, I think it's better we have a mix of the two.
Yeah.
Because
it's been the most effective.
Yes, because the challenge I had while I was running that course, because you have people from all over the world, and you can only engage when you are in a group.
Yes.
For a particular assignment. Then again, the challenge you have is time zone. When you are ready, the other roommates, they are not ready. So those were the challenges I had. But I learned more during the group discussions that when you are on your own, and sometimes when you are even on your own, you want to talk to someone. This, what's your view about this? So you have to wait until
So, I mean, thank you very much. So, like I said earlier, people who have learned by blended means have some experience, and they are better able to confidently say, this is the method that works. But we need to be honest, like you said, to ask ourselves which method really works best, and not which method is the easiest or the cheapest. Because on the long run, it's about effectiveness. It's about actual learning taking place. If the method we found to be easiest, cheapest, or most comfortable for us is not going to meet the objectives of learning at all, then why commit to it? There's no need, in my opinion.
Let me ask the question.
Yes.
Let me know you
Everyone will work.
financial expert, like chartered accountant.
No.
So I'm asking the question because I participated in the course, financial course.
Okay.
There was a 2-day finance for non-finance managers.
Okay.
So I did the course physically.
Okay.
Then I went back as well. Canvas that keep me back to the same course over just so that you retain as much skill. So during the COVID, we went online. I said, okay, let me do it again. It was as if I didn't learn anything. You do exactly the same course, the same teacher, the speed with which he was teaching physically, the way he was explaining, the looking at us to see whether you understood or you got it, it was big difference.
Oh, we're lost.
So when it was online, it was fast.
Yeah.
He was waiting for feedback. Of course, people are not giving feedback. People are not giving hands. And so it just went on and on and on. After 6 hours, after taking back to the first slide, he said, why didn't you go? I said, I didn't know where you were going. I just let you go. Then, now that you're running up, all my questions, everything, and I went back and said, please explain this issue to me. And of course, trying to explain it meant that it was disrupting the flow.
Yes.
And I said, at the time the way you were going, I felt if I stopped you, it would affect you. So I'm very sure that if we did this questionnaire and really got feedback from training managers and from HR managers and learning providers and people who have attended training, you will find that there will be a percentage that will let us know what kind of investment should be made.
Yeah.
So I'm also asking this question. Schools right now, I'm talking of secondary schools and colleges in Nigeria. Last year, the federal government encouraged them to go online. As soon as the lockdown started, it went 100% offline. They didn't even attempt to keep some of the technology.
Because most of the teachers are delivered. They are not used to.
So it's back to what you said about instructional design. The problem I think most of them have is having online instructional design properly structured and brought online so that there will be engagement. The student can be at home and say, I don't feel like going to school today, but I want to engage with the subject of today. Yeah. I think it's a very important research opportunity.
Thank you very much. I mean, I don't think it does not sound like ISM trying to do some marketing. It's also one of the reasons why we want to make this discussion now. So we have been using LMS since 2014, so it's not new to us. But again, there are many players in the market. And in the market also, the people that make the loudest noise are the ones that will get most heard. Even if what they are saying is not important or relevant, they'll get the most attention. So it's difficult. But for us, we think there can be an opportunity to call people's attention from time to time. The change will not happen immediately, but we need to keep putting that discussion out there for people to realize that it's not about who is making money from what right now, but about strengthening our market, which is the learning and development market, and ensuring that in the League of Nations, we are not sliding further backwards in terms of learning and development. Because one of the ills that we will now experience is in the fact that we enjoy the easy way out, and that's what we want to continue doing, even when we put our naira on it. It does not take anyone any fun. Thank you very much for. Do we have any hands up?
No hands up, sir.
Okay, so like I said, we didn't intend to take more than an hour, 30 minutes of your time. It's now an hour, 20 minutes. So we let this opportunity for any other business. People who have any other thing to say about instructional designs, the types and methods, or learning and development in general. Because I know that if you ask HR people and learning and development experts at whose doorstep we are throwing the fall, they have something to say. They are probably in between two extremes, and it's really difficult for them to determine, how they will respond. So I'm willing that there are HR people online right now that have one or two things to say, questions to ask, and contributions to make. I think we should give that 2 minutes to get people's responses. Do we please let us know? Yes, please go ahead.
How do you help management who are much more interested in the numbers, getting they have some organization where they've not been training and they've been getting the numbers are really, production is going on. Yeah. And they are already used to getting results without having structured training. So how do you help them with this
You know, what I think is that if organizations are getting results without training people, there must be some other factors responsible for it. It does not mean that those factors will always be there. We need those management to understand that the fact that there is sales, there is profit right now, when there is no training and development, cannot mean that that is the right thing to do. We all know that in reality, the right thing to do is to train people. And when you don't train them and you are getting results, it's like a mirage. The closer you get to it, the more you find out that it's not true. And so, and it does not matter for how long you do the wrong thing, it still means that it is not the wrong thing. Even when they think that training people does not immediately create increase in revenue for them, they should not forget that it increases the quality of their human resources. And what that really does for organization is that when there are better people working for you, whatever result you think you currently get without training, then it means that that result can be double and can triple. So let those organizations not think that they are already making the best of their opportunities. If they are not trained and they are getting that result, it means that if they are training, you should get multiples of those results. So there needs to be whoever is responsible for convincing management needs to look for case studies. When I don't mean written or academic case studies, examples of places, organizations where training and development has made significant impact in the results of organizations. HR people, learning and development people need to look for those cases and share with relevant people for them to understand that though they are making profits right now, they are losing in other ways because they are not training people.
Yeah. I have going to add to yours.
Yes.
Yeah. So, how do we determine whether or not somebody is an intellectual asset rather than a public liability? That would determine whether or not how much we put into that in terms of training. So, how much money do you think airlines put into training of the pilots? Because if you don't train the pilots, they can crash. So they don't see them as a liability, they see them as assets. So that's why they do simulation. So they can spend 1.8 million for 2-3 a weekend on simulation training. Because if they're not flying and they're not simulating, sooner or later they will crash some of these aircraft. So I think that's the challenge that CEOs usually have in terms of budgets. Yeah. I've consulted for a company, I make 6 billion a year, and spent 0 on training.
Wow.
So if you want to train, they'll tell you online. Yeah. And the question that was asked from the CEO was, why don't you invest in training for your staff? They said, every time we train them, they see it as an opportunity to make a CV from the job. He said, okay, no problem. Why don't you find out why they are going to leave you? You know, so you have it complete. He said, that's why we have you as a consultant, because I want to ask you the question. So why don't you, you employ people, the first salary they have is the salary they keep for the next 10 years. So naturally, they will look for something to add on their CVs to look for a better job, a better paying job. So they're not reviewing salaries. Okay, why are you not reviewing salaries? Because performance management structure is weak. So you don't really know how to determine if somebody is productive. So you feel that they are not being productive, so you don't have any motivation to train them. And if we ask you that if you train them, they become more productive. The question will not be if I train them, they will now feel that they can earn better elsewhere. So it becomes a vicious circle. So what you do now is that I'll keep you where you are. I'll look for somebody who's already trained. to come and do.
And you currently, they tell you to go.
Yeah, pay 4 or 5 times what you are being paid to come and do your job. Who will bring in quotes, higher efficiency, more professionalism, instead of training you and building you up. They'd rather bring somebody, plug in, play. And I've seen that it's a cultural issue.
Yeah.
Because I started my career with HP in the UK, and I noticed that my managers were direct training managers, in the sense that they immediately see from supervising what your issues were, and immediately they're taking it out. The first thing they noticed from me was that I didn't know how to dress.
But you're not dressed there.
Young boy, you know, I wanted to dress like Michael Jackson. That's a typical thing. The first job you're thinking how to do your hair like this, you want to make a statement. And I'm like, hey, this is a conservative organization. We wear dark suits, we wear shoes that don't make noise. So they sent me for dress training.
Yeah.
They came back, took my card, and took me to buy this jacket, buy this bladder. And I came 1 week and they was this different. And one of our clients said, oh, is this the gentleman that just started working with you last month? It looks different. Yeah. Immediately. So I learned of the job immediately that there was value to understanding colors, about fabrics, about presentation, about your physical brand, how it represents your entity. But they didn't get rid of me. They didn't say, who the hell are you? What do you do? So from that point on, the next thing I knew was that the same idea of conversation, I think we need to improve on your presentation skills. HR. Next thing I'm doing the training. Next thing I'm doing the training. This person is a sales rep. It's not an HR manager. Right? It's not HR coming to tell him what I needed. He's the one using me on the field. And so after he done that for 6 months, he was confident enough to push me to a job that was $100 million US. Said that, I'm joking. Go ahead and try it. It was the biggest individual business in Europe that entire year for all tech companies. All IBM, everybody was the same biggest individual business, and it was for Ross Perot. This Ross Perot, that presidential candidate in America, was for his company. And because of the confidence he had in the fact that this gentleman can deliver with the training, with the mentorship and everything, I was able to talk to the gentleman that was in charge, and HP got that business a year later. But it was on my performance review for that year that I engaged successfully with Ross Perot systems. So whether they got revenue a year later didn't matter because it made a difference to my promotion. But the thinking of the average manager here is different. Right. The average manager here is thinking, if I train you too much, you come and tell me, or you come and tell me you want to take on my job. So we have a cultural problem that cannot be fixed by knowledge, by technology, by research, that we still have to also find a way to change.
Right. I agree with you, absolutely. And the question I am wondering about is that people who prefer to keep an army of untrained employees because they are getting results. How about trying to change the paradigm to say, this is not the best for you, because what you are keeping is a baggage, dead weight load. You need to convince them, tell them to, for a group of people, just a little sample, and send them for a training for 6 months, for 1 year, and let's see whether there will be any difference in the specific job functions that those people perform within that period of time. And that little research, I would like to call it, will send the message home whether training is necessary or not. They just need to look for few people, might be senior, might be mid-level managers, and say these 10 people or these 20 people, let's take them out of the whole lot and use them as our experiment. Train them for the next 6 months or 1 year, and let's see after that training or during that training, there will be anything different in what they do, in how they do it, or the result they get on the job. So I think, again, management needs to be willing to venture, to try. I hope that people who give who have the most power in organizations will not be too hesitant to undergo that experiment. What is necessary in convincing them? Do we have any hands up? I'll come back to you later. Yes? Okay. So,
said, when people are producing results for lack of training, has anybody found out why they're producing results? I think in Nigeria, it's very clear. In fact, not just Nigeria. If you don't train them and they're producing results, it could be because they are motivated not to lose their jobs. It could be because you've set them targets.
What if they are training themselves?
Or they could be training themselves. I also think that they could be much more efficient if they have those targets and that trend.
Right.
So it just saying that they get results without training shouldn't be enough. So what if you want to move your company from 26 billion to 50 billion and you still want to use the same number of staff? So you have to scale up in terms of their skill sets and their capacities. It could even be your management staff. So it comes back to the case study I mentioned. And I remember some of the managers were saying, even we as managers have to train ourselves. We get one to our master's degrees and all ourselves are committed involved. So what happened in the end was that the company chased one single contract with the federal government. They put everything they had in that one single contract. And this is a real life case study. They put everything they had, they invested, the board invested a lot of tens of millions of dollars in an asset, hoping to get a particular contract. But because they had not properly trained their audit team, the audit team missed out a very important aspect in the checklist of what was required to sign that contract. So the contract expired, and nobody remembered that it had expired because nobody was constantly trained to be looking out for these things. And they got the assets while the contract was still valid. But by the time the asset arrived to commission, the contract had expired in between. But nobody took paid attention to it. So by the time the asset arrived, they now went to look for the contract. They said, this has expired 2 months ago. So they lost that bid. They lost another extra $10 million that loan that they took from the bank for that. So as I'm talking to you right now, we have a company that is about the company that was moving 200,000 barrels of Nigerian oil at a point. That's 10% of Nigeria's oil. At a point, they have to go bankrupt. But the single reason that it was silly to be thinking when you train them, they will leave. You kept them, and now they are dogs. Perfect natural case study.
Thank you very much. For me, it's interesting how we have moved the discussion all around training and development in general, rather than on mode or methodology of training alone. But I'd like to tell us in conclusion that whatever result we currently get as an organization is a reflection of the current capability or the skill sets of your people. If you need to get better results, you don't need to flog them or set unrealistic targets. You will need to train them. The reason why the results may not be better is because they're probably at their peak. So going back to setting hard targets or flogging them from time to time will not get to where you want them to be. You might be so lucky, you are getting the sort of result you want now, but it might mean that is the best you can get. You will never be able to get any better result until you have trained them to get better. Because what you are seeing right now is a reflection of their capability. Perhaps they are producing at their maximum capability. And if that, there will come a time that that maximum capability will no longer be enough for the organization. And it will be bad that that is the time we now recognize the importance of training and development. I hope it's not going to be too late. Well, if there are no hands up to me, I'd like to thank everyone for their contributions. I'd like to thank a lot of people also who signed online. There are a lot more people that are online. And I would like to thank my team also, Jimmy, Abi, Sheyi, and the rest of the guys. Thank you very much. We hope to do a report of today's presentation and discussion, share with all participants, and as much as possible, make sure that a story is published in 1 or 2 days within the month to keep putting the learning out there. Thank you very much once again, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. My name is George. That's you.
Oh, there's a hand up,
Hand
sir.
up, sir.
There's a hand up. Oluwasomi
Yes, sir.
Ajedi. Please, you need to unmute Oluwasomi. Sorry, there's a hand up.
All right, good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Good
All right.
Good
afternoon.
afternoon.
Okay, I'm Oluwasomi from Crowstone Creamy. At the earlier part of this meeting, the network was not that okay, so I might have missed out on some things. But I just want to ask for the best method, probably, or a suggestion from you, how to get people to be more engaging on e-learning. Because, okay, in the physical class, you can readily read body language and you can see how participative people are during a training. But however, during an online session, you at the point in time when you call attention of some of the participants, you get to understand from their response that they actually are not 100% into the training, and sometimes it could be demotivative and demotivating to the anchor of such training. So what do you think can be put in place or done better to get the engagement of people in the course of training? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oluwasomi. Thank you very much. That speaker of the mind is from here, it's from our end here. Thank you very much. I'm going to share, answer his question based on my personal experience. We have said earlier that a system that enables engagement between the learner and the content is the most effective. And what I do as an instructional designer is look for, first of all, determine what I want these learners to learn. What is the learning outcome? Specific effect I want this process to create. Then I will look for materials that helps me to deliver that learning, that contains that has the actual content or information the learners can take in and help to create the knowledge I wanted them to create. Those materials can be case studies, they can be leaflets, they can be video presentations, they can be links from some websites. I put them together and make sure that I give access to all of the materials. So all the learners in the class can have access to the materials. Then from within those materials, I pick very critical issues for discussion. And I put together a set of what I call guiding questions. They will provide discussion to the facilitator and the rest of the class based on those guiding questions. But they won't be able to provide those discussions if they do not engage with those materials. But if they engage with those materials, I will ensure that those questions require that we go back to those materials from time to time. Then I will give them time to provide a written discussion or a discussion online. And everybody is given a deadline. But what I just ensure is that for flexibility, a process of reading, writing, or case analysis that will take 3 hours, I could give people 3 days or 4 days to do it. That way, there is nobody in the class who will be able to provide the discussion if it does not engage with those materials, the content. That is a bit of challenge for people who find it difficult to settle down and go through the materials. And that is one big area that learning and development expert needs to focus on. That is what I do. And when I provide discussion, I read the discussion and then respond, give them the feedback based on what I want them to learn. And in my feedback to them, I make them understand what quantity of the learning they were able to achieve from the discussion and against what I want them to learn. That also provides a motivation for some of them. For example, if I said we were able to achieve 50% of learning, so in the next activity, I expect that you will put in more effort so you can achieve more. But I just ensure that the resources I provide, they are different in terms of their nature. So some PowerPoint presentation, some videos, some textbook, all of them can contain the same thing or very similar. So you find people who are comfortable with just listening to video and will be able to provide that discussion. Some people will be a bit of it here, a bit of that, a bit of that. What's important is that an average person would not be able to provide that discussion until he has gone to interact with those materials. That's what I do. I set those targets and standards within specific timelines to make the discussion happen. Then after providing the written discussion, we now meet on Zoom or Teams to ask people about where were their areas of challenges. And that time, we are able to provide live action discussion just to reinforce the learning. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you did, sir.
Thank you very much. Okay, Jimmy, you need to check for us the chat box if there are other questions or if there are any hands up. If there are none, I'd like to thank you once again and look forward to speaking with you another time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Enjoy the rest of your day. And I thank you to those people that came in person. It also gave me the opportunity to, not be here alone, okay? And I appreciate their contribution in particular. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. You need to refresh my mind.
Yeah, we wouldn't mind. Thank you.
So,